Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are having a great week or ended the week on a good note. And happy weekend ahead. First off, if you are not continuing on to October with TRT, please feel free to exit the rooms and turn off the chats, etc. And bid you farewell, and hope you, wish you nothing but the best going into the rest of the year. Now, with that being said, pretty crazy day on the markets today. A lot of whipsaws back and forth, round trips. So let's talk about that real quick. I'm not going to go into too further in depth details or analysis today, only because I'm headed out the door, gone for the weekend. But we'll be back at it on Monday and next week, obviously. So to start off, the PCE, the anticipated PCE this morning came in higher than expected. Okay, so if it, I figured if we were going to come in line at 4.7% as last month, the core PCE price index year over year, we actually came in at 4.9%. The Michigan sentiment wasn't any better either. You definitely had some Fed speaking as well today. Now, as far as next week's data, there's not much, no big ones, except particularly next Friday you have non-farm payrolls and job data, JOLTS data. A lot of stuff around the job sector, obviously, and we'll see what happens next week. But definitely the 4.9% was the highlight of the day. And it's kind of confusing, right? Because at the first part of the day, we look on the 5-minute chart, we ran from 270. So the bulls for the last couple days, 2 to 3 days, been holding this 268, 270 level. And we got this pump all the way to 275. And guess what, folks? We're all the way back down now. We actually hit a new low on the year for Q at 267.10. The prior low in June was what? 268.28. And we hit 267. If you remember the video from last week, I mentioned if we did break what, the 275 and 271 area, we were going to go much lower. And I did draw, I believe, on this last week that we have support here at 267. So that target pretty much hit. If we don't hold these levels, there's another target down here about the 260 level. All right. So that's what we got to look for next week. If things don't start turning around for the markets, and by the way, the market pretty much had the worst September since COVID or since 2008. All right. This is the worst month since COVID as well, or pre-pandemic. So I'm going to put that 260 target down there. I realize too that we are completely oversold on the markets. If we look at the McClellan oscillators, I'll take a look at that later, but the McClellan oscillators are telling us that we're pretty much deeply oversold as well. So we've got to be a little bit careful in terms of, holding on to puts or buying more puts. Now I am holding some puts, the 250 puts for October 14th, buying a little bit of time on that, see what happens next week. Perhaps we get a gap down on Monday to start off the week and maybe sell off those puts. But it definitely looks like, we are oversold on most time frames. In addition to that, you have 6.5 billion on the sell side market on close and balance. So is this capitulation? I don't think so. I mean, this capitulation should be bigger candlesticks than this, Bill. So in any case, 275 swung all the way back down to 267. Last minute, just completely, the market just blew up. So that's the target for next week. 267 breaks. We'll see that 261 or 262. If we do get a pump, all right, and I'm sure we will. Number one, 270 is going to be tough to break, but you have resistance at 275. Okay, so that's going to be a resistance here. So I'll put a target here. If we pump, we'll probably see 275 retested, but if we dump, we're going to see 260 much faster. All right, so that's the cues for you. Over on the SPY, obviously SPY had the worst week or worst month actually, and it actually closed well below the June lows, okay, on the daily here. So we're at 357. If you look left, there's some support, and there's some support at 350, and so let's just put a target there at 350 for next week if things don't start turning around for the SPYs. So that's 350 target. But if it does pump, guess what? 360 is now going to become resistance. If 360 becomes resistance, guess what? We're going to see another resistance right here at 365. So that's going to be a target there. Or we're going to see more closely to 350 next week. Going into the Qs, I'll go back to the Qs real quick. On the weekly here, we did close, as I mentioned in the chat room, we did close under the moving average 200 on the weekly. The last time that happened, I'm going to scroll left to back to 2008 here. All right, look at this. Once we break that moving average 200, that causes panic in the markets, guys. Okay, I'm not saying we're going to dump another 41% like we did in 2008. All right, that's huge. All right, Q back then was at 42 bucks. Okay, it went to $25. All right, so you get that sense that there's a lot of fear going into next week, which also could be a good setup for a bounce, but still we're looking at potentially a more further downside for the Qs. All right, and same thing with the SPYs. The SPY actually lost 49% back in 2008 once it broke that weekly moving average 200. All right, what did hold up well today is Tesla. As amazing as that is, it did not close at the LOD. It pretty much closed above 265 area, which is my particular area of going short. It just never all throughout the day, it just kind of held that 265 area. All right, I'm trying to scroll through the charts here. Okay, so remember last week target for Tesla was 265, and it hit that, right? And we closed right at that 265 mark. Guess what, folks? That's not a great looking candlestick. That's a gravestone. All right. And you have a gap here down to 254 to 250. So if things don't turn around, I'm going to put a target here of 255 or 254 as a potential downside target. I don't play Tesla a lot. I'm just giving you guys these level for your information. You could decide what to do with it, but for sure we're going to see a 275 resistance. So if it just seems to me for now, if there's no great news next week, there's just going to be that continued gravity. It's one of those, just continue to short the pop kind of thing. So 275 upside target, and 250 on the downside. All right, so that's Tesla. And I'll talk about VIX in a second here, but let's go to Apple, right? The famous, the big one here. Apple closed under 140, 138. If you guys remember from our last week's video, at a target of 146.69, and it actually broke that. Okay, we went much lower. We started the week well for Apple, all right, and it just completely lost its momentum. So downside target, if there is more downside to the market, look at this. All right, you have a 136 support. Okay, I'll leave that there, and potentially a 133 support on Apple. Look for this on Monday. Most likely, guess what, folks? If things are oversold, there's going to be some bulls to step in. But 140 will be a psychological resistance. But if it gets past that, you'll see 143 retest on the Apple. All right. And finally, folks, before I'm gone for the weekend, is VIX. All right. I remember charting this just a couple of days ago for your guys' information. So this was the May lows, June lows, and September 2002 and current lows. It's funny, right? Because we actually did not close at the highs on VIX. Okay, so VIX took a pretty good steep dive under 30 today, if you guys saw that, but held its ground still above 30, right? If the bulls are going to get any shot, this has got to come back down under 30. But the weekly VIX, that is a indecision. All right, so we're kind of, so this is a little toppy. Certainly I can see that happening here. So we'll just have to see going into Monday. All right. So real quick, just to give you guys some other pieces of information, I will go ahead and bring in another snapshot here. This would be your 2-hour Qs, okay, on the regression channel. All right. So interesting, right? The 275 today, I'm so glad I did not color calls at 275. I was looking at this regression channel, and I didn't alert this or anything, but I started to buy some puts at 275. And I was pretty happy with that decision based on this regression channel. I mean, it's a miracle worker. You know what I mean? Whenever you feel like you want to go chase something, check a 2-hour or 1-hour regression channel. Just make sure you're not buying calls at the top of the channel, because you saw on the regression channel, it hit that 275, 276 area. It didn't quite make it to top channel, but it just completely rejected that 275, right? And look at this 2-hour regression channel. At some point, look at this 2-hour regression channel is 262. at the bottom of this channel. So look for that next week. And remember what I said about Qs as the next support is about 262, 260. So the bottom of this channel could see that. We'll see on Monday what happens. Can we open up over 270 or around 270 just to get faded back down? So we'll see about that going into Monday. So with that being said, I think I'm done here. Good week overall. All right. Little sloppy for sure. A lot of, fake outs, a lot of action on the left and right. The Bulls holding on to the 275. They gave up the 275. They try to hold the 272s. Then they try to hold the 268s. And finally, the Bulls gave up on the last shot here to end the week and to end a bloody September, which a lot of people said September usually is the best seasonality for SPX, and it turned out not to be true. All right, folks. So I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and see you.